Have you ever looked at your Mac storage and it seems like it's filled up way more than it should be? Maybe there's a bunch of memory in use where there shouldn't be, or it doesn't seem physically possible for certain things to run on your Mac, but somehow they work. On the surface, this can be confusing and hard to make sense of, but when you dig into all the details, this all has a purpose and is just part of how macOS works. The same goes for things like updates that seem to take forever, or why AirDrop sometimes doesn't work. Because Apple doesn't go out of their way to explain this stuff, there's a lot left up to speculation, and I think that can create anxiety about how your machine is working or if it's working too hard. So today, I want to walk through what exactly is happening underneath and pull back the curtain on a few of these, get into some of the commands and actions that you have at your disposal to see what's going on and where you have control over them. One thing I think that we can all agree on, at least a lot of us, is that Apple is great at offering products that most of us can just pick up and use, and they just work. They do a great job at simplifying the experience and sort of pushing all the complexity out of the way so you don't have to fiddle around or worry about it. But the flip side to that is when you actually want to know how things work or understand the complex bits, there's no super obvious answer or path to follow. What that ends up doing is creating a lot of confusion and conflicting information, so even when you do try and find info on these subjects, it's tough to tell what's right from wrong. So the way that I want to approach this is to go through some of these things with actual examples and explain them along the way, and hopefully clear a lot of this up, starting with a question that I asked at the start of this video. So this is something that I've come across quite a bit, where say I've got a 1TB storage disk on my Mac, it'll say that I've used up about 90% of that drive, when I know there's no chance that I've put that much stuff on my Mac. You'll see if I go into disk utility, it's gonna show me some general information about that drive, but it's not very detailed. And if I go into my Mac settings under storage, it does give me a slightly more useful breakdown, but it's still not accounting for any kind of hidden files. Now, I can look for the hidden files by going into that folder and hitting Command, Shift, and period together, but this has the reverse effect where everything is far too detailed, and the only tool that I found that properly visualizes what I'm looking for is called Daisy Disk. You'll see if I run this, it'll surface most of the files that Finder normally hides, which gives you a good idea of where that storage went. And normally the biggest consumers are cached data, device backups, and macOS snapshots. Cached data is essentially temporary information that your Mac and app save so they don't have to recreate it every time. If you've ever used streaming apps like Spotify, Apple Music, or TV, those can cache downloaded content into the gigabytes. And any web browsing that you do also gets cached and can add up over time, but I would say the bigger consumers here are backups and snapshots. If you've ever backed up your iPhone or iPad to your Mac, those files can get enormous, and the easiest way to manually remove them without plugging anything in or without any tools is by going to Finder, click Go, and go to Folder, and paste in this location, which I will leave in the description of this video, but each one of these hex folders represents a backup on your drive that you may or may not want to get rid of, depending on how much storage is being used and what you need. Similarly, if you've got Time Machine backups enabled on your Mac, even though you're likely offloading the backups themselves to external storage, the thing that you've got to look out for here is snapshots. The snapshots are basically a record of what your drive looked like at a specific moment in time. You can kind of think of them like a saved game file in a video game where you can continue playing a game and making changes, but if something goes wrong, you can go back to an earlier state, and macOS is going to save these usually before any kind of big software updates. Or if you don't have your Time Machine drive attached, these will save locally to maintain some version history until it can successfully back up to that drive. The important thing to note here is that these don't create a second copy of your files. It's more of a blueprint that points to them, so you wouldn't think that they would use much storage at all, but the tricky part is, say if I've got a 100 GB file and a snapshot is made that references that particular file, if I go to delete the file itself, it'll look like it's deleted, but because the snapshot has a dependency on it, it's gonna preserve that file hidden away in storage. This is part of the reason why updates can seem slow on your Mac. On the surface, it looks like it's just downloading an update and installing it, but what's actually happening is the new version downloads, then macOS might take a snapshot of your system, and what draws out the install is everything it does after. It's gotta prepare the storage drive, rebuild a fresh version of your current system, update everything that needs updating, rebuild some of those caches I mentioned earlier, along with a host of other things. That's why at times it seems like it can freeze up or be quite slow, but if anything goes wrong in this process, that snapshot it makes allows it to revert to your previous install. Now, most of the time, macOS does a pretty good job at managing this itself, where it'll delete snapshots to free up space when it needs to, but every once in a while, they can balloon to an enormous size, and we've got a few options to address this. The first and probably easiest is to connect your external drive and do a time machine backup if you haven't for a while, which normally will resolve a lot of your issues. But beyond that, we can go into the terminal and type this command that will show us a list of snapshots, and delete single entries with this command, or we can use this one to tell macOS to free up as much space in relation to snapshots as it can. That should help you reclaim a bit of your storage back that you couldn't see, and there are some other apps like Clean My Mac that can help visualize general storage and purge out space and memory, but memory itself is another area where a lot of people get tripped up with Macs. Historically, when we think of RAM or memory, we think of it like this big container that we can put things into, where we don't want to see it get filled up too much. So say if you've got something like 95% usage, often people think that there's something wrong, which might have been true for those older systems, but that is no longer the case. These days, RAM is so fast that we actually want most of it to be in use because it can make our entire system faster. So macOS is constantly looking for things that it can keep in memory to make frequently used apps run or start faster, functionality within those apps, system caches, and so on. You can kind of think of this as a hammer at a workbench, where you might normally take a hammer out of a toolbox and use it, and then put it away and get the next tool. What macOS is doing is getting that hammer along with any other tools that you frequently use and keeping them on the workbench because it knows that you'll probably need those again. That's why when you see people making posts about using up all their RAM on their Mac, it doesn't really mean anything at all, and a bigger indicator of how it's performing is going to be watching your memory pressure. If I open up Activity Monitor and I watch this graph, if it's showing green, it means that everything is running smoothly. And when it goes into yellow, that's where things are starting to work a little bit harder but are still completely usable. And it's when it goes into the red where your Mac is really working to keep up. Where a lot of people get tripped up with Activity Monitor is looking at the physical memory and memory used, where they think they've only got 1 or 2 gigs left and they're not going to be able to open up another app. macOS is smart enough to reclaim any memory it needs from the cache, and if it still needs more, the first step it's going to do beyond that is to compress anything in memory that's inactive and make it smaller, and finally it'll move the memory contents to your storage if it's really topped out, which is what this swap file is referring to. That swap file is also why you'll potentially see higher RAM in use than what's physically on your machine in the form of virtual memory, but the gist of it is the system sees any unused RAM as wasted RAM. So if you're upgrading your Mac and you're not sure how much RAM you need, something that you can do is run the apps that you would normally do and watch your memory pressure and that swap file, because that's going to tell you a lot more about how your system is operating versus how much physical RAM is in use. The storage and memory are a little easier to understand once you know what's happening under the hood, because they're isolated to the Mac itself. Where things tend to get more frustrating is when macOS has to start talking to other Apple devices through features like AirDrop or continuity. You know when you try and copy and paste between your iPhone and Mac, or AirDrop something between them and it just sits there and hangs? The reason that that's happening is because all these features are relying on more moving parts than people realize, all coordinating with each other to transfer the data that it needs to, and something isn't quite right. A lot of people think that Bluetooth is the only thing that's being used when they AirDrop something, but Bluetooth is primarily used for the devices to discover each other. From there, your devices need to verify that they're allowed to communicate or transfer back and forth between them, and only after that will they open a secure connection over a direct Wi-Fi link where they can finally transfer data. The problem is, if any of these pieces get into a bad state, say Bluetooth stops advertising correctly, Wi-Fi fails to establish the link, or some background service hangs, or something like a VPN changes how your local network is handled, the entire feature can just stop working. That's often why it feels random, but AirDrop itself isn't broken, just one of the systems it depends on is. It's also why most of the time restarting your device fixes the problem. A restart isn't only restarting AirDrop, but all those other components like Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi stack, and all these continuity and discovery services. In other words, you're resetting every layer that those features rely on. If you use a VPN with your Mac, that situation gets even more complicated. VPNs install their own virtual network interfaces or filter local network traffic, and that can interfere with some of the things that continuity relies on, and is why they might not work until you turn your VPN off. Ultimately, these features aren't unreliable because AirDrop is flaky, it's because there's so many layers of networking and coordination that need to happen here. And one failure to any of these systems can make it feel like the whole system is broken. It's not only wireless connections that can cause headaches. The devices that you physically plug into your Mac have their own set of issues, and one of the more common and misunderstood ones that I see is the disk not ejected properly error with USB or portable storage. Oftentimes on a Mac, especially if you're on a MacBook, if you've got a storage device plugged in and the Mac goes into sleep mode, when you go to use it again, the drive looks like it's randomly disconnected, but in many cases, it's actually a side effect of how macOS power management works. When your Mac goes into sleep mode, one of its biggest priorities is reducing power consumption. That means putting the USB or Thunderbolt controllers into low power states, and in some cases powering down Thunderbolt controllers inside docks or hubs that the drives connect through. When your Mac wakes up, it's got to bring all that hardware back online. First, the controller wakes up, then it looks for any devices connected and identifies them. It then reestablishes connection with the device and remounts the storage volume so macOS can use it again. Now, most of the time that process happens so quickly that you don't notice it, and you often don't see any errors. But the problem is that each one of these drives is its own little computer with its own controller and firmware. And if you're using a dock, there may be several devices in that chain, all that have to wake up and respond in the correct order. Basically, if your Mac asks for the drive before it's fully awake, or the dock or controller takes too long to initialize, that's where we see these disk not ejected properly warnings, even though you haven't physically unplugged anything. Unfortunately, there's not a single universal fix for this because the cause isn't always the same, but there are a few things that solve it in the majority of cases. For starters, I find using a dock or a hub with its own power source can sometimes solve these issues because you're no longer relying on your Mac to provide power in the same way. I've got multiple videos talking about hubs and docks that I will link in the description if you want to know more about those, but outside of that, there are some super easy things that we can try. This one might sound obvious, but restarting your machine occasionally will also restart all your USB and Thunderbolt controllers and the drive state, which is a good place to start, along with making sure the OS is up to date. Beyond that, making sure that you avoid daisy chaining any accessories together is important. It's fine if you connect an SSD to a dock, but if you've got an SSD that's plugged into a hub that goes into a dock, that's going to be prone to issues like these, along with poor quality cables or cheap enclosures. If that still doesn't work, we can attempt the pmset command in the terminal, which will tell macOS not to spin down or put our storage devices to a lower power sleep state. Or the final thing that I would do, which I would treat as a last resort, would be to use the caffeinate command in the terminal to keep the Mac awake. Running that command in the terminal will just keep it on, or you can specify the amount of time that you want it to stay awake for, but Ideally, I would try most of those other solutions first. Honestly though, that issue has been a long-standing quirk with macOS that Apple has never cleanly solved, and it's been logged across Intel and Apple Silicon machines for years. So just be aware that you're not necessarily doing anything wrong here, but sometimes some of these solutions can help mitigate it. In any case, everything that I've talked about today is due to macOS doing something deliberately, and I think the main issue in each case is you're never really shown what or why it's happening. Once you start wrapping your head around what is going on, the confusion or anxiety surrounding if your Mac is broken or working too hard disappears, because you know what's normal and what's not. Apple's approach to hiding complexity so things just work for people is great, but it does also come at the expense of often feeling like you're looking into a black box when you're trying to troubleshoot or learn more information. So hopefully this helps out a little bit in that regard. That's all I've got for you today. If you've got any questions or things that you want to add to this, feel free to drop a comment down below. If you want to see more tech-related content or have me explain memory pressure like it's a weather warning, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next upload.